how can a fuel that made up only about 0.3% of global jet fuel in 2024 suddenly decide who wins Asia's next aviation race? That number sounds too small to matter, but that is exactly why it matters. Because while many Indonesians were told this was still a future technology, other countries were already building the factories, signing the deals, and preparing the rules. This is not the biggest channel covering Southeast Asia. But sometimes the most important story is not told by the loudest voice. It is told by the people still asking the uncomfortable question. Why does Indonesia have the resources, yet others seem to be moving faster? Assalamu alaikum. Imagine the year 2035. A passenger leaves Jakarta on a flight powered partly by sustainable aviation fuel. The feedstock may have come from farms, mills, or waste streams across the region. But the profit, the refinery margin, and the global certificate may belong somewhere else. That is the future many countries are preparing for now. In 2025, IA projected SAF production at around 1.9 million tons, still only about 0.6% of total jet fuel use. The open question is simple. Will Indonesia become the country that supplies the raw material or the country that controls the finished fuel? Indonesia is not starting from zero. That is important. Pertamina's Cilacap refinery has been linked to SAF production using used cooking oil, with reported output potential around 300,000 kiloliters per year. So if you are thinking, wait, Indonesia already has SAF, you are right. But the shocking part is not that Indonesia has started. The shocking part is how quickly the race around Indonesia is changing. Malaysia has announced plans to begin SAF production in 2027 with an initial target of 1 million metric tons annually. 1 million tons is not a small pilot project. It is a statement. It tells the market that Malaysia does not want to watch the SAF economy from the side. It wants to become a hub. And here's where Indonesian viewers may feel that quiet vindication. Many people already suspected this. They suspected that Southeast Asia's green fuel story was not only about climate, it is also about industrial power. It is about who owns refineries, who owns certification, who gets the airline contracts, who becomes the regional gateway. Because sugarcane bagasse sounds like waste, palm residues sound like waste, used cooking oil sounds like waste. But in this race, waste becomes bargaining power. What would happen if Indonesia had the feedstock, but Malaysia had the stronger export machine? The first counterintuitive fact is this. Global SAF is still tiny, but countries are fighting early because early rules create long-term advantage. In 2024, SAF was around 0.3% of global jet fuel consumption. That means the market is still young, but young markets are where future leaders are created. Indonesia's own SAF roadmap estimates that alternative SAF production technologies may need around $6.14 billion in investment to meet domestic SAF demand until 2060. That is not just an energy number. That is an industrial warning. You may be thinking, if the market is still tiny, why rush? Because aviation cannot easily switch to batteries like cars. Long-haul aircraft need dense liquid fuel. SAF is one of the few realistic options for cutting aviation emissions without replacing entire fleets. That is why this matters beyond airports. It touches agriculture, plantations, refineries, ports, jobs, and national strategy. Indonesia has scale. Indonesia has population. Indonesia has aviation demand. Indonesia has biomass potential. But scale alone does not win. Pride comes first here because Indonesia has a real foundation. It is not an outsider in this story. It has already operated SAF-related initiatives, and Pertamina has been developing production capacity. But pride must be followed by pressure, because the next 60 seconds reveal why having resources is different from controlling the value chain. Resources are not the same as power. Malaysia's move changes the comparison. Reuters reported that Malaysia plans SAF production from 2027 with a target of 1 million metric tons annually. That number immediately shifts the regional conversation. Malaysia is not only talking about domestic use, it is positioning itself as a production base. The Pengerang biorefinery project in Johor is designed to process up to 650,000 tons of renewable feedstock per year. It is expected to produce SAF, hydrogenated vegetable oil, and bio-naphtha. That matters because Pengerang sits near major shipping routes. Location becomes strategy. Now, if you're watching from Indonesia, you may be thinking, but Malaysia also depends on feedstock. Correct. And that is why the story gets more interesting. The winner may not be the country with only the most waste. The winner may be the country that organizes waste into a bankable, certified, export-ready supply chain. This is where concern enters. Southeast Asia has feedstock, but feedstock is messy. Used cooking oil has collection problems. Palm residues have sustainability questions. Agricultural waste has logistics costs. Sugarcane bagasse has competing uses in mills and energy. Irina has warned that residues and waste face availability, competition, and cost challenges in Southeast Asia's SAF future. So the real race is not romantic. It is not just turn waste into jet fuel. It is paperwork, plants, ports, mandates, certification, and long-term buyers. That is less viral, but more powerful. And this is why Malaysia's push feels dangerous for competitors. It is building the middle of the value chain, not just the farm, not just the airport. The refinery middle is where countries capture serious value. Remember the opening number. 0.3% looked too small to matter. Now it looks like the starting line. Indonesia's challenge is bigger because its opportunity is bigger. The country has rising air travel demand, a massive domestic market, and strategic pressure to cut emissions. Indonesia's SAF roadmap includes a future pathway where SAF blending rises over time toward 2060. Argus FME of Transportation. Argus reported that Indonesia's planned SAF requirement for international flights could begin at 1% in 2027. 1% sounds small, but 1% creates a market. A market creates suppliers. Suppliers create contracts. Contracts create winners. You may be thinking, then Indonesia is safe because domestic demand is huge. Not automatically. Big demand can become a weakness if local production cannot scale fast enough. When demand rises faster than supply, buyers import. When buyers import, other countries capture the margin. This is the shock beat. Indonesia could have the demand and still lose the higher value race. It could need SAF, collect feedstock, and still depend on foreign technology, foreign certification, or foreign refining partnerships. That's why sugarcane jet fuel becomes symbolic. Sugarcane bagasse is not just farm waste. Studies have assessed sugarcane residues as possible SAF feedstocks through advanced biorefinery pathways. Science Direct, MDPI Energies. In 2026, researchers from the University of Queensland and IIT Delhi announced work on a process to convert sugarcane waste into biofuel more efficiently. But here's the catch. Technology alone does not create a national champion. The country that connects research, investment, regulation, and airlines fastest gets ahead. The next 60 seconds matter because this is where the comparison stops being Indonesia versus Malaysia. It becomes Indonesia versus the speed of the entire region. Ask yourself this: who is moving like SAF is already tomorrow's oil? Singapore plans to require departing flights to use SAF from 2026, starting with a 1% SAF target and rising over time. Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. Singapore does not have Indonesia's land size. It does not have Malaysia's palm scale, but it has aviation control, finance, logistics, and global airline connectivity. That is a different kind of power. It shows that feedstock is only one card. Airports, regulations, capital, and trust are also cards. In Asian competitions, small countries can win by controlling the system around the product. Then there's the global picture. OECD FAO projects global sugar production to rise from 178 million tons in the base period to 205 million tons by 2034. Agricultural Outlook. It also projects that 63% of that growth will come from Asia. That number should make Indonesian viewers pause. Asia is not a side character in the sugar story. Asia is becoming one of the main stages. And if sugar growth, agricultural residues, and SAF demand meet in the same decade, the region could become a serious battlefield. Curiosity should be rising now, because the most surprising winners may not be the countries with the loudest announcements. They may be the countries that quietly build reliable supply chains before everyone else notices. This is why Brazil matters too. Brazil has attracted major attention for sugarcane-linked sustainable fuel projects, including a reported $1 billion sustainable fuel deal involving Chinese investment. That proves the sugarcane to fuel idea is not fantasy. Big investors are already looking at where biomass, policy, and aviation demand can meet. So what does that mean for Indonesia? It means the country still has time, but not unlimited time. The honest conclusion is not that Malaysia has already defeated Indonesia. That would be too simple. The truth is more useful. Malaysia is moving aggressively to become a SAF production hub. Singapore is using policy and aviation power. Brazil is proving sugarcane can attract global capital, and Indonesia has the resources, the market, and the urgency to compete. But urgency without execution becomes regret. The same 0.3% number from the beginning now has a different meaning. It is not a sign that SAF is irrelevant. It is a sign that the race is still early enough to win. But early enough does not mean slow enough. For Indonesia, the question is no longer whether sugarcane waste, used cooking oil, palm residues, and other feedstocks can become aviation fuel. The question is who will organize them first? Who will certify them first? Who will finance them first? Who will sign the airline contracts first? Because in the next phase of Southeast Asia's aviation economy, countries will not only compete by how many passengers they fly, they will compete by who fuels those flights. And if Indonesia waits until SAF becomes obvious, the most profitable seats may already be taken.